I call this meeting to order. Cindy, would you call the roll, please?
Mrs. Coghill? Here. Mrs. Crabtree? Here. Mr. Gambiani?
Here.
Mrs. Intihar?
Here.
Mr. Matheson is absent this evening. Mr. Paulson?
Here.
Mr. Vroman?
Here.
And Dr. Emmer, would you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The next item on the agenda, and we have a very brief agenda tonight, is public comment. And we have two individuals signed up for public comment. It's the usual recitation here. You bear with me. The opportunity to speak to the board is provided for members of the public who have a question or comment on an agenda item. The board appreciates hearing from stakeholders and values your thoughts and questions. The board strives to make the best decisions for the district, and public input in a variety of venues is very helpful. The board must protect the civility and decorum of this meeting. Please be respectful for the duties of the board and democratic process in your comments tonight. Please use the microphone, as I know you well know, Harold. State your name and address, and if you're uncomfortable with the address, whether you're a resident of the district or not. And please limit your comments to 3 minutes. Please be factual and courteous, and do not include statements that are personally disrespectful or condescending to members of the board or staff. If you feel your matter needs to be discussed in more detail, please attend the board's chance to chat or present your comments to us in writing. Mr. Lonks?
Yeah, my name is Harold Lonks. I live here in the district in Winfield. Tonight, the board is approving the WWEA contract. I have a few questions and comments. How can you make comments on the agenda item when there's no information made available to the public? How about making public comments available at the end of the meeting? I also find it appalling that the public received only 50-hour notice regarding this meeting. Why did the board administration have to call a special meeting today instead of waiting until the next business meeting next week? I've also heard comments from teachers stating that the contract was very generous. This agenda item regarding the WWEA contract lacks transparency, trust, and communications. This is one of the most important issues impacting our children and the taxpayers who pay about 75% of the cost through property taxes. I am holding up an article from the Daily Herald dated March 28th. Quote, trust, communication, key issues in D200 board race. I'm going to read some quotes from the article to refresh what was promised during election time by Jim Gambiani, Jim Vroman, and Chris Crabtree. I feel like in order for the community to stand behind us and trust us, they need to feel that we're engaged. Another quote, as for being transparent, the district is better than it was 15 years ago. And another quote is, thinks the level of trust is higher than it was when he was first elected to the board of 2011, but the district always can do more to improve it. And to enhance transparency not only means getting information out to the community. I didn't see the community being engaged with the item, no transparency regarding the details of the contract, and the trust factor of the community will drop many notches. Here's another quote from the Suburban Life dated April 8th. I was running to continue to serve in a different capacity in the district. I always have been about the kids first. Well, voting for this 3-year lucrative contract will put the teachers and certified staff first. Yes, they are important, but our children and students are more important. Let's look at what happened in the past couple of years in D200. School board members eliminated B sports at the middle school because they could no longer afford to pay $150,000 and would not consider volunteers. A parent was told at the last board meeting that there's no funding available to offer courses of foreign languages for elementary students. Larger class sizes at elementary schools, installing cell phone towers on school property to raise revenue, and finally the board is considering hiking student fees. And let's not forget about the repairs and upgrades needed by our buildings. The WWEA contract will directly impact our children and students. When school funding runs short, will the teachers get back any of their increase? The answer is no, because it's a legal contract. Our children will be impacted with less programs and larger class sizes and buildings in need of repairs. You as a board member will need to decide if our students can continue to lose education programs, learn in larger class sizes, and buildings that are in disrepair. Are you going to be voting no to support the needs of our children and students, which is your number one priority?
Thank you, Mr. Lyons. Ms. Shaw?
All right, let's see if I can handle this. First off, how does giving more money to the same adults for doing the same job with no strings attached for the children? Think about that one for a second here. I read about this about 2 days ago, that there was going to be a meeting. First, I knew about it. Why was there no public notice? Why aren't you waiting until next week to do this at a regular meeting? Why are there no details available on the website? Let's try a few things that it does tell us that you're doing. 3-year contract, fine. Provides for a balanced budget, sounds good, does it? Contains eliminate reopenings, so that, I want to see the language on how we can reopen the contract. Tell me that there's limited reopenings doesn't do a darn thing for me. We need the actual language on that part. What else do we have in here? Eliminates the staff access to the early retirement option. That option never should have existed. My own opinion, the end of career salary bumps should never have existed. The 20% that they were giving up till 2006, I think, was when the state changed the law, and so whenever our contract expired, they were getting that 20%. Then they went to 4 years at 6%, which is actually more lucrative. Okay, now you've gone to a thing that says a bonus at the end of the career. None of that should exist. In fact, looking at it, we had at least 2 administrators, Sorek and Bella, who saw that thing saying that their contract said they could get 20% their very last year. So they put in for it. They got it in 2008, I believe it was. The next year they got no raise. The original letters both said they wanted to stick around to 2011. Almost immediately after putting that in, they got to stick around to 2011. One of those letters actually said that she didn't want to burden the district with penalties for sticking around too long. However, the district let her stick around. So her end career increases were 20%, 0, 6, and 6. That's both Bella and Sork. There may be others. I haven't gotten through all the data yet to see how many this affected. But it appears that you had people put in for their very last year, 20%, and then stick around 3 more years and put in again for their end of career, 6%, and there were at least a couple board members here who were on the board at that time. Another point, I can't find anywhere in the data where I can locate which people are currently getting those 6% end of career salary spikes. So there's no way of knowing who's doing this, unless you can look at the data, and the data's not available for almost 2 years. It's crazy. We need to know who's on those salary spikes. We need to do away with those end of career spikes. More important thing, make sure tonight before you vote that you explain to everybody in the audience, especially us who haven't had a chance to see the marked up contract, exactly what it is. When you say no step increase, does that mean the thing stays the same as it is? Does that mean people don't get raises for a step? They only get it for going from one lane to another? I don't get it, you know? And whatever's read into the minutes is what has to happen in the contract. And if what's read into the minutes is not clear enough, you could end up in the same problem that COD had when they did their golden parachute and then had to call a special meeting because they didn't vote it legally. Got it? You absolutely have to let the community, and especially the board members, know what we're voting on. Another point, board members should have been on the negotiating team. There was no taxpayer representation on that negotiating team, okay? Board members should have had an opportunity to know more what was going on. This is not something that should be done behind closed doors by other people and given to the board for a yes/no vote. The contracts over the last 10 years have been way too lucrative. When you look at comparing to private sector, median income in this state when it first looked in 2009 was $57,000. The next time I looked, it was dropped to $55,000. Median family income is going down. Taxes are going up, and it's all to support people's pensions and increase for public sector workers. You guys are the only ones who on a regular basis are doing better. And I don't begrudge the teachers. I mean, they deserve a good salary. But a 20-year, 25-year teacher is not worth 2.5 times a new teacher. They don't teach 2.5 times as many students. They don't teach them 2.5 times better.
Ms. Shaw, can you wrap up, please?
Thank you. You guys have a great day. Please make sure you vote properly.
Thank you, Michelle. We do have one action item. It's the approval of the WWEA contract. We'll follow the usual format we do for action items. I'm going to have Dr. Schuler and the staff give some context and background. Then we will have discussion. And as I notified you in my email to board members today, when we do have the vote on the action item, as a point of personal privilege, I will allow those board members who wish to make a statement at the time they vote. But I would caution you to try not to repeat much between the discussion and your statement so that we don't get bogged down tonight. But I appreciate it. I appreciate your cooperation. Dr. Schuler?
Thank you, Mr. Broman. I'm going to do a couple of things here in presenting to you the contract bargaining agreement, the 2015-18 agreement with WWEA. That's the action item for tonight. I'm going to set a little bit of the context for the bargain and then have Dr. Rammer review the details of the bargain. So just by way of reminder, it's not new information for the Board of Education. We had our first discussion with the Board of Education on December the 10th to discuss the initial bargaining process, set at the time who the board wished to designate on the team for the board for the bargaining process, as well as to determine the subcommittee that would oversee the bargaining process and to review the district's targets going into bargain. On January 28th, we returned to review those bargaining parameters, as well as to review some comparative data, and again set the parameters for the discussion. And then we met 3 times in executive session in May with the Board of Education again to review compensation items, some of the insurance items that we're going to talk about tonight, the language proposals in specific detail. So the board did see the language items that you are voting on tonight, and again to provide some direction for the bargaining team. So again, just want to make it very, very clear that the board has taken an extensive look at what is being put in front of you tonight and has had a chance to review it. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Rammer to walk through some of the highlights and the compensation items in the bargaining agreement. We'll go from there.
Thank you, Dr. Schuler. In reference to the Board of Education, we began the bargaining process with the WWEA in January 2015. We reached a tentative agreement with them in May, on May 19th, 2015, and the teachers ratified that tentative agreement last Tuesday on June 2nd. The highlights of the tentative agreement before you, it is a 3-year agreement covering the 15-16 year, the 16-17 year, and 17-18. There's new language in this proposal to allow individual buildings to adjust their starting times for staff to accommodate additional PLC and professional development activities and opportunities to help students learn. The step increment associated with the traditional salary schedule will sunset at the end of this 3-year agreement. Beginning in January 2016, the district and the WWEA will convene a committee to create a new and sustainable compensation structure, with the parameters being it needs to be created within a balanced budget for the district. Starting on year 2 of this agreement, the district will no longer be required to allow teachers to retire under the state's early retirement option. That is a state law that allows teachers to retire under what's called ERO. But in the second year, the district will not be required to do that anymore through language in this contract. This agreement raises the base salary for teachers coming to District 200 so that we can be competitive with other districts in the area as we try to attract the best possible teachers for our students. There is a memorandum that deals with a reopener or opportunity to sit down and have conversation with the union should the state impose any significant or severe funding or revenue constraints. We anticipate as much as $2.8 million in insurance claim concessions on the part of the teachers in such things as a spousal surcharge, increase in out-of-pocket and deductibles, and prescription copays. The parties agreed to deal with and minimize or eliminate any potential penalty taxes associated with the Affordable Care Act, when that comes into case for us. The summary of the compensation in year one in the 15-16 year, there will be a blended CPI for the 14-15 levies at a 1.15% increase. In year two, 16-17, the increase will be 3.88, and in year three, year 17-18, there will be a CPI floor of 2.92 and a ceiling of 3.5. Again, with a blended CPI for the levy years of 16 and 17. We are also increasing the student contact hours for summer school from $25 to $30 an hour for teachers that are working in the summertime, and the proposal also calls for an increase in the co-curricular base of 2% for each of the years of the contract.
We'll now open it up for board discussion. Any comments, questions?
I guess I have to go first. I get to go first. I think one of the things that has kind of surprised me in my first 2 years on the board is the number of people that I've talked to in the community that rave about the experience they've had with the teachers in the district, how important the teachers were to their students' education. And it didn't surprise me from the standpoint that I knew that it was important, but it surprised me from how strongly our parents felt about that. So I think one of the things that this contract does, if it becomes a formal contract, this agreement, is it acknowledges that the most important ingredient of a quality education is a high-quality teacher. And when you talk about directly impacting the children and students of our district, as we heard about earlier, that's done by a high-quality teacher. So I'm very confident that this sustains that. The other thing I feel really good about the components of this agreement, that members of our community, if they look into the details, will really appreciate beyond what's probably going to be the headline. There's a lot of stuff in here that Dr. Rammer overviewed that over the long term is going to be really valuable to the district and to the community. And I feel pretty positive about the shared commitment to the district from both the teachers as well as the rest of the staff. So those are my comments.
Dr. Schuler or Dr. Emmer, could you kind of just explain for the purposes of the people here in attendance what the salary schedule is, or what the step schedule looks like, so that people can get an understanding of what that means for it to sunset at the end of this collective bargaining agreement?
25 words or less.
Sure. So the salary schedule establishes a pay rate for an individual based on years that they have been within the district. Those are typically the steps that they're on. The lanes typically, they do coincide with level of education. So we do have a staff that has a very high level of education, so many of them are in the master's lane or beyond in terms of the schedule. So, salary schedule, Mr. Broman dictates how an individual moves through various salary increases in their time in District 200. The increments within the schedule kind of vary based on where you are within the schedule, but currently those step increments tend to range between about 2.4 to 2.7% based on where you are within the schedule. So I think there are two things included in the language here within the agreement, important to note. One is that I think retooling the compensation structure, so the reality, regardless of your perspective on the current compensation structure, is that it's been in place within District 200 and within the educational community for a very long time. So retooling that compensation structure is something that I think should be done with a great deal of care, time, and attention to make sure that what we develop is a model that certainly is sustainable and achieves the goals of this organization for a very long time. And so it establishes a work group that is going to work on that so that it's not a decision just made within the context of an individual bargain that perhaps may be short-sighted and not serve us well. But the piece of language in there is kind of that concept of the traditional step piece sunsets at the end of the agreement. So I think kind of the starting point for building a new compensation structure is a little bit more open. But again, that is going to be done jointly with, I think, a great deal of care and with the right resources to make sure we get it done right.
Mrs. Utar?
Dr. Schuler,
Dr. Schuler, there were a number of what I understand to be misstatements made in public comment tonight. I don't know if you would care to address those in a document for the public to review or to the people who made the statements at some future date. But I think it's important to note that that there were a number of errors and maybe just those misconceptions need to be clarified and brought to the individual's attention so that they understand the picture from a realistic, in a true and factual perspective. That's my only request.
especially when
Especially when it comes to the ERO and the 6%, which we haven't given now in 3 or 4 or 5 years, and the all of that stuff that has been the practice. So, right now it's kind of hanging out there for the public, and I would like to have that somehow corrected so that the public doesn't have the wrong impression about how generous we're being or not. We just we've been very good, I think, with the taxpayer money, and they need to understand from a true perspective. They need to make their own opinion, not from rumors that they hear.
Any other comments or questions?
I was going to say, I'm sure she's talking to me. My data comes from getting actual salary.
You're out of order, Michelle.
I do. I have a couple questions. I have a couple comments and questions. First, when I looked back at the last 2 contracts that we have had, I've seen things like salary freezes and step freezes and minimal increases due to the economic times that we have. And life is about compromise. And we can't always expect our staff to be the ones that are taking the hit. And our staff are the ones that are working directly with our children. And we know student achievement and learning is based upon the quality of educators that are in our district. And we have really high quality educators. We have a lot leaving in the next 2 years. And we want to make sure that we are recruiting quality teachers to come to our district. So I do like the opportunity that we have to increase that incoming salary of new teachers to hopefully become more of a destination district and not lose them to other surrounding districts that we have in the past. The salary step system, which has been standard practice in education, getting rid of that, I think, requires a lot of trust on our staff's part to eliminate something like that, because that has been their common way of compensation, and now they are leaving it up to all of us to, as a district, to determine what is going to be their future in terms of their salary. So, I think in the next 2 years, that is something we need to work very carefully on in terms of building trust, in addition to figuring out what our community values too, and getting their input on this also. And I want to say thank you to all the parties that were involved in negotiating this contract, and to our staff who does work tirelessly on behalf of the students in our district, and I appreciate it.
Joanne?
I agree with what Chris said, so I won't repeat any of that. Just 2 points that, like most people, I came to the district because of the reputation of the district. And when we came, it was Old Pleasant Hill School, and when I walked in, I was like, oh my gosh, this is why we came. What they're raving about. I couldn't believe that I was coming to this old building. And within days, it didn't matter. It was because of the teachers and after the administration that I knew were taking my boys and daughter to and just it was a phenomenal education, and really, you know, I could go into details, but what they did for my kids was amazing. So if we're gonna have older buildings, if we're gonna have to always be working at that, it's okay. Because what we need are exceptional teachers. And to keep what we have is from a culture in our district of doing what's right and doing what's best for our kids. But our teachers have families as well and are concerned about their well-being, and it's based a lot on their income. So that's important as well. So we have to keep that whole relationship going well, and that they're going to be our best recruiters, and you know, just speak so highly for us and do their job to the highest quality, and not be concerned about, oh, you know, not thinking they could go somewhere else and make more money. That, and then speaking about negotiating, I really do not think board members should be on the negotiating team. I negotiate my job all the time, and it's almost like having a buyer and seller talking to each other. You need a buffer of people who, so the negotiations can go, speak freely, and not have, you know, the prime people in the room. So I think they did a phenomenal job. I think they did a job where the communication and then getting along and doing the right thing was the most important thing. So I'm thrilled with it, and glad it'll be done.
Anyone else with a comment or question? If not, may I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved by Mrs. Intihar and seconded by Mrs. Coghill that the board approved the WDLEA contract. I will now call for the vote, and if any board member wishes to exercise the point of personal privilege to make a statement, please feel free to do so. I've decided to proceed by alphabetical order. That would be PQR. Mrs. Coghill?
Is this to make a statement?
No. you vote.
To vote. Oh, excellent. Yes. Is this here?
Mrs. Intihar was the mover, she should go first. Sorry.
I don't care, I can, whatever you want, whatever, I better put this back out. Okay,
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
all right.
Mary
Mrs.
Lou.
Intihar?
Well, I will be voting yes on this contract. I believe that inspiring excellence starts with excellent teachers. And if we expect our teachers to inspire excellence, we have to make it, give them an environment and an atmosphere where they can truly inspire our teachers. They need to know that we value them and that we pay them competitively. I think it would be very irresponsible for us not to approve this contract and try to use the money that is truly earmarked for teacher salaries in any other way. This board has said many times, and this community has said, that teachers are our most important resource, and they can overcome shortcomings in our buildings and sometimes in our technology and our general operating environment. Conversely, better buildings and technology can really do very little to compensate for poor instruction. If we want good, excellent instruction, we need to be competitive in the marketplace. We don't need to be above and beyond the marketplace, but we need to be competitive, and I believe this contract gives us the opportunity to attract and retain quality staff for our students for the next 3 years. So my vote is yes.
Mrs. Coghill?
Yes.
Mr. Gambiani?
I have a prepared statement before I cast my vote. First, I want to recognize the teachers of our district and thank them for their hard work and dedication. Their commitment to academic excellence ensures that student achievement is not compromised. Tonight, the board will vote on a new 3-year WWEA teacher contract. While I support certain provisions within the contract, I cannot support those related to the compensation. Specifically, total salary increases approaching $6 million, total salary percentage increases that could reach 8.5%, total stipend percentage increases of 6%, and a 50% increase in post-employment payments. Beginning with the 2016-2017 school year, this district will enjoy a $4 million windfall due to the fact that 60 retiring teachers will be replaced with teachers at lower salaries. This situation presents the district with a unique opportunity to have access to funds that can be used for building maintenance and improvement, technology upgrades, or increased payments toward debt service obligations. These funds could also be used for unanticipated expenses that the district may incur due to pension shift legislation, reallocation of general state aid funds, formerly or currently known as Senate Bill Number 1, or lower per student dollar allocations. I believe it is important to acknowledge that the district has numerous current and future financial challenges that can no longer be ignored. Unfortunately, these available funds are being used to support the teacher contract. As a board, it is incumbent upon us to make difficult choices and use taxpayer money based on the identified needs and priorities of the district. I believe the $6 million earmark for the teacher contract should rather be used for the priorities and needs I've just outlined. Therefore, I will cast a no vote.
Mr. Paulson?
I think one of the key roles of the board is to chart a financially stable path for the long haul, not just a 3-year window or a 1-year window. And I think what I like about this is it sets up a good plan for the future and allows us to work within our 5-year financial forecast that we saw in, I believe it was January. So we're staying within those 5-year projections. And it also addresses some of the other key cost-related items that we have discussed in public many times over the past couple of years: professional development, the impact of rising healthcare costs on our district, as well as the seemingly nonstop threat of significant funding changes at the state level. So those are 3 things that are addressed very specifically in this agreement that we have talked about in public. So I think everything, in a whole, as well as what I mentioned earlier before, I'm very comfortable with this agreement. I vote yes.
Mrs. Crabtree?
Yes.
And Mr. Vroman?
I too have a statement. A little bit of background and history. As many of you know, my wife and I first moved here in 1983. Our oldest son was going to attend kindergarten in 1985, and that was the year of our last strike. And it was devastating to our son, but children are resilient, and it took after a couple of weeks he got into school and was doing fine. But what lasted for a number of years after that strike was some discord and bitter feelings in the community. And it's something that both the district and the union learned from. And for the last 30 years, we've had a good collaborative working relationship with the WWEA, where we've represented, each side has represented their constituency aggressively, but reasonably, in a compromising and collaborative fashion. In doing so, the WWEA has represented its teachers well, but they have done so knowing full well what the financial responsibilities of this board and this district lie. In doing so, we have maintained the district over those 30 years in a sound financial position while trying to maintaining a competitive salary rate so that we can be comparable in our compensation to our benchmark districts. This has come really to the forefront over the last 10 years. As Mrs. Crabtree pointed out, 8 years ago, this board faced grave financial challenges. And the WWEA and the teacher union stepped up, and they accepted a salary freeze over 2 years, plus some force reduction and some elimination of professional development fees that were available to help the district out. And that effort has continued. In the last contract, we did eliminate the 6% retirement boost that other districts still maintain. Again, it was worked through a good collaborative working relationship with the district, with the WWA, so that can maintain those competitive salaries that are so key to providing our teachers a reasonable living in this district, and more importantly, a grand education for our students. That brings us to the current collective bargaining agreement. It does provide for increased compensation to our teachers. In year 2, the increase is 3.88%. In year 3, it's targeted at 2.92% based upon CPI, realistically CPI. It also includes adjustments at the base salary so that we can maintain and attract younger teachers to our district, which we are going to desperately need next year when 60 of our teachers retire. It also provides for increase in post-employment payment of $250 a year for each year that a teacher is in the district for a maximum of 18 years. And it does provide for some increase in the summer school stipends for our summer school program. But the district receives a lot for this increased compensation to the teachers. We receive flexibility in start times so we can accommodate our professional learning communities, which is so enhanced and improve the education that our children are receiving in this district. It does provide some adjustments in the health benefits savings. PMA advised us in February when they presented the financial projections that we could anticipate a 7% annual increase in health benefit cost increases. And we needed to do something to mitigate those increases. And the teachers accommodated us with respect to that. They recognized that was going to be a financial challenge for us, and they have worked with us to address that issue. We have achieved a remarkable agreement with the WWEA to sunset the traditional step schedule at the end of this collective bargaining agreement. Again, as Mrs. Crabtree's pointed out, this is a major achievement. And we're going to have to work collaboratively with our teachers over the next 3 years to come up with a new schedule, with new inputs and new parameters to it. But if our past practice of working together is any indication of what we can do in the future, I'm optimistic that we will achieve a schedule that reflects the will of the community, will appease the teachers, and they will embrace it, and will be meaningful for the education of our children. So I'm optimistic about that as well. Now there are, as Mr. Paulson noted, there are some surpluses we expected in the projections that were shared with us by PMA this past winter. And much of those surpluses still remain, even with the cost salary increases we are giving them. Those surpluses are available to help us achieve or acquire technology that we so desperately need. But those surpluses would never achieve or never pay for what we need to do for our facilities. As the Facilities Committee reported to us last May, a month ago, 3 weeks ago, the expected increases or expected financial commitment we need to make to upgrade our facilities is $51 million. And that's not going to come out of any surplus we have in our operational expenditures. We're going to have to come up with creative ways to achieve that. I know our Facilities Committee is working hard on it, and we'll get a report from them sometime later this fall. But it's something we have our eye on, and we're going to have to address, and we will address and meet that challenge. So all in all, I think this is a wonderful agreement. It's reflective of, as I said, of the collaborative working relationship we've had with the union over the last 30 years, and I vote yes in favor of it. The action item is accepted and approved. And with that, may I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Mrs. Intihar, seconded by Mr. Paulson. All those in favor of adjourning, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Please adjourn.